Excellent. Hello, everybody. I think that maybe some of you just had lunch, so just a bit of exercise. How many of you here are entrepreneurs? How many of you here are entrepreneurs? Entrepreneurs. How many of you here are working for large companies in the sector? Excellent. How many of you here are investors? Okay, that's good. Excellent. So those entrepreneurs, okay, if you're at pre-seed seat, just come and see me, okay? I'm a founding partner of Plus Partners, okay? Here also, we also have Jose Tomas, and that would be wonderful. So we have a fantastic panel to actually deal with some of the with one of the subjects that is dearest to my heart, which is actually food and how can we achieve more productivity and more access and more sustainability. And we have two fantastic panelists. We have Ignacio Gavilan, okay, really sort of looking at the forefront of insect food and at the really sort of how can make innovation there. And also Maria from Agrana Group, a fantastic group, also doing great things around particularly food processing sector. So if you can just introduce yourselves just very, very briefly, and then we will dive deep into some of the topics that we have for this afternoon.
Super, thank you. So this is Ignacio. I've been in the food system sector for the past almost 30 years. And over the past 3, we co-founded with more people that are in the room, a biotechnology company. It's called Insect Biotech. So what we basically do is feed insect larvae, not the ones that fly, but the larvae, with a specific substrate coming from the olive oil waste, right? So it's a business at scale. And then with the larvae, we can obtain 3 different products. One is the larvae itself that becomes protein that we sell to aquaculture, to swine, to pet food. We extract the oil from the larvae, and that becomes biodiesel, or can also contribute to the beauty and hygiene sector. And then this animal, during the growth period, has an excrement that becomes a very powerful soil biostimulant. So it's a very comprehensive business. It's fully circular. I feed this larvae waste, and I obtain 3 super low carbon products.
So you can use everything from the larvae, no?
Like the
everything. That's fantastic.
Like the pig in Spain.
Exactly.
And then I can talk more about the food system.
Absolutely.
That was the intro. Thank you.
Fantastic. Please, Maria, if you can introduce just quickly yourself.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Maria Konstantinova. As mentioned, I work for Agrana Group. That's an Austrian food processing company. It's in the B2B business, so we do sugar, starches, fruit juices, fruit preparations, and we do them for the dairy industry, ice cream industry, bakery, savory. The company is presented in all continents around the world. So let's say Agrana, I believe it's very relevant for this talk because the company is positioned really in the middle of the food value chain. We're not exactly where the farms are. We're not where the end consumer are. We are in the middle, so it's a very interesting aspect. I have spent the last years in China and Japan, and I will share with you later some insights and interesting, let's say, aspects of future food yes. Coming from Japan and China. I think can be a very relevant,
absolutely,
let's say, angle. Yes.
And actually, Maria, if you want, let's start here. So first is, there are a number of challenges that we're facing here sort of in the food industry, particularly is production has gone, sort of the yields in production have really sort of increased. Then but at the same time, there's sort of significant problems sort of on it, but it's not evenly distributed. Access is not evenly distributed. And then there are sort of some areas that actually, Maria, you were talking about before, that sort of in some countries, there are some specific challenges. For instance, you were mentioning Japan, yeah. That actually sort of could apply to Southern Europe, or specifically to Spain, in some years from now. Therefore, I think that you have some learnings on how we can potentially learning from other places, apply that to solving our own challenges. And we'll discuss, if you can go on that, particularly telling us a bit more about your Japanese case study, that would be very interesting.
Okay, so what I would like to talk about is that Japan basically is a fascinating case of food innovation under pressure. So why? Japan is not typical growth story. Japan is actually a story with constraints. Why? Japan is facing aging population. The workforce in farming is also aging in Japan. They have limited agricultural land. In Japan, there is a very high demand for food quality from the end consumer. We all know that. So this is really posed a very particular and special innovation challenge for Japan. Imagine in Japan, in the agricultural workforce, currently the average age is around 70 years old. So Japan is not really only losing a workforce in agriculture, they're losing also agricultural knowledge. So imagine if a farmer worked like 40 years in a field. This farmer has really a very good knowledge about the soil, the water, the consumer needs in the area. That's a very specific knowledge. So here, what is the lesson that in the food industry, knowledge is not always digital. And sometimes tools like AI or sensors, they cannot entirely capture that knowledge. So for Japan, that's a very interesting case because they have to think how to transfer that knowledge further. There are more things for Japan. In Japan, they're not a typical story like in, let's say, Brazil or America, where you have big open fields, where you can scale big machinery easily. In Japan, farms are usually small, they're located in mountainous areas, they're fragmented, so Japan needs a special innovation. They need smaller machines, they need smaller drones, they need specific AI tools that apply only for small or medium-sized farmers. Those small and medium-sized farmers actually represent the biggest part of the Japanese food system. Okay. And so they also have investment constraints. So what is, let's say, the lesson here? The lesson is that technology works, but it works if it really fits well into the food system. And here I also would like to bridge to Europe, because Europe is also an aging food system. And what we will be facing here in Europe is what exactly Japan is facing now, maybe in 10, maximum 20 years. Japan is showing us food innovation under, constraints, under pressure, and I think that's a very important lesson.
Excellent. Yeah. So let's look at Japan in order to potentially sort of innovate here more in Spain and so forth. I think it's super interesting. So. Yeah. If we go sort of, if we try to sort of step more towards sort of the precision agriculture and some of the areas that, particularly here in Europe, we have been innovating. No? I mean, there are some clear challenges right now. No, yeah. and I was actually just talking before with someone in the food industry. They were telling me, we have a big challenge in last mile distribution, for instance. No, I mean, how to get sort of certain food products to sort of certain locations across Europe. No, I mean, what do you think that are sort of some of the bottlenecks that we should try to be solving over the next few years here? What really sort of concerns you about, in general, what we call precision agriculture?
Let me take a few steps back. And go back to the super high level, 55,000 feet level. Excellent. On food systems, right? Okay. We human beings develop agriculture and farming, but it's only in the 20th century that the food systems really hikes into what it is today. You will often hear that the food system is broken. Far from that, it's doing exactly what was designed to do, which is to feed with inexpensive items the 10 billion population that we're heading to, right? So it's doing exactly what was designed to do. Now, you go to the Second World War, up until now, we've been sort of abusing the system because the externalities were not taken care of. Social, environmental, and now suddenly we find ourselves pedaling back to the roots of the food system. Precision agriculture, organic farming, regen ag, because we realized we were just producing for the sake of producing cheap. Same with animals, animal welfare. So that's super important. So that's one of the bottlenecks. Now, add to that climate change, add to that geopolitics, add to that the very simple economic dynamics that we live through, inflation. And then you have all these bottlenecks. So more in the supply chain itself, if you dissect into, for example, agriculture, you have on-farm post-harvest losses that are not accounted for. That is almost 30% of what we produce. It gets lost. You go to manufacturing, you go to retailer, you go to consumers, that waste remains 30%, if not more. In a world of 9 billion people, approximately 2 billion face malnutrition. Malnutrition is understood as the excess of and the lack of. And that number has been changing since the Second World War dramatically to the excess of. So now less people face hunger, more people are overweight. But that's another bottleneck. Food redistribution for those in need, it's still not getting there.
I wanted also to deal with regards to the bottlenecks, because it is very important to understand them. Do you think that technology at this point in time, at the disposal not only of agriculture, of people sort of really at the farms and on the fields, but also across the food chain, do you think technology is, for instance, when you're comparing Europe versus the US versus Latam, is now sort of a bottleneck, i.e. access to sort of some of the latest technology that maybe some people cannot apply because whatever, they don't have the capital, because maybe their fields are not extensive enough and they cannot apply certain things. Do you see that as being a bottleneck, or it's something that is far from it? Technology across what you would call sort of the food system.
I mean, I think we both share that we're data-driven businesses.
Yes.
Right? So technology definitely will help. If you look at the insect industry, 5-10 years ago, there was no real equipment. They were using something else coming from the rendering industry. Now we have proper industry developing, and that comes with technology. That comes with high sophistication. Precision agriculture, same thing. Even Regen Ag. You look at every millimeter, because one of the bottlenecks will be access to land. In my case, access to substrate to feed these animals successfully.
Excellent. And when you see another important topic that sort of was commented before by some experts is regulations across Europe, and when you compare them with Asia, I mean, right now, what's the role that you see them playing? I mean, is there still sort of a big sort of bottleneck due to regulations, or you see that this is easing because, for instance, the recent agreement with Mercosur and in Europe? I mean, how do you see that? Not to go into politics, by the way, but just to speak about sort of a bit more the regulatory environment.
I definitely see Europe as an aging food system. We are facing already in Europe reduce of labor shortages, land, climate changes. Definitely we are going in that direction. That's why I already mentioned that Japan could be like a preview what will be coming for Europe. Definitely countries like China are completely different. China is about speed, it's about technology, about implementation. They're really going into that direction. I do believe their topics like AI and technology will be implemented much faster, and they are currently implementing them faster. There are special programs from the Chinese government in the next 10 years until 2035 to go very, very hardcore in that direction.
Which is something that you see or you don't see in Europe?
I don't see that in Europe. No, definitely, we're not exactly about speed. But Europe is, for me, it's more close to Japan, including the high quality standards of food expected in Europe, which is not necessarily bad, don't get me wrong, but in terms of speed, we will be behind. So here, topics like robotics and automatization will be extremely important also for Europe as well in Japan, because in countries with incoming labor shortages, without automatization, that is completely necessary, and also AI really implemented, but not only on, let's say, on the on the position of the farm. Yeah, we do that. We talk a lot about sensors, drones, only when it comes about the farming, yields, watering, but the AI must come also later in the process.
For instance?
It comes in the procurement, in demand planning. I have seen that because Agrana Group is in that part of the value chain, as I mentioned. Demand planning, raw materials planning. AI must help us make right decisions, the correct decisions under pressure.
Do you see it as an opportunity for our entrepreneurs here? Demand planning, do you see it as an opportunity for entrepreneurs, for instance, demand planning, resource planning
yes,
for the food industry?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So how about you? In terms of sort of, we have talked about gene editing, robotics. I mean, how do you see them sort of playing a role, for instance, in your industry, but more broadly into the food systems?
Definitely, but let me go back to your policy question, because I think it's important. Yes. Policy is a fundamental piece, and now what we are seeing, if you look at the book from Thomas Friedman, The World is Flat.
Yes.
It's 2008. Sorry, I'm aging myself, but it's age is the high price you pay for maturity, right? So Thomas Friedman wrote that book in a time where all the treaties were opening up. China was opening up. Latin America was opening up. It was very easy to trade. Now, in the recent 5-10 years, we're seeing a bit more resource nationalism. People are having to go back and produce themselves.
Yeah.
You saw it with the Mercosur deal.
Absolutely.
There you go. So I think the opportunity in here as well comes to all of you as entrepreneurs on developing that sort of, I don't want to call it resource nationalism, but it's what it is. How can you get a better use of waste? How can you get a better use of what you already have without the dependencies that we generate with countries that end up being difficult from the geopolitical point of view? I think that provides a lot of opportunity, and with that comes the robotics. So the exchange is more on technology, but the resource, it's more and more becoming what you have. And we're extremely lucky in Spain. When we started looking at the insect business, the amount of agricultural waste that is not properly used in Spain is huge. I mean, we produce fruit and vegetables for most of Europe. The case of olive oil is very obvious, right? It's 70% of what you drink in Europe. So by looking internally, you start finding these opportunities.
And for instance, in your own business, I mean, how do you see now sort of new technologies being applied? I mean, you were telling me that prior to your sort of launching your farms, you were doing sort of significant amount of research, innovation.
No, absolutely. The R&D, you need to unlock resources, right? So if I take the example of our business, we feed larvae with olive pomace, which is the waste after you produce the olive oil. You throw a bunch of insects in there and they die. Through technology and R&D, we develop a substrate that is actually edible and nutritious for these animals, right? And it takes time and it takes resources. There's a lot of technology involved around. There's a lot of trials, there's a lot of products, there's a lot of machinery that was developed for these, right? And that unlocking those resources that are in front of us but we're not using, I think is the key, and technology obviously is.
And do you see, and I know that you're not sort of potentially that close to the fields, no, but there has been some talk about saying, hey, listen, potentially advances like sort of robotics plus AI could be able to somehow make up for the shortage in human labor in some of those areas like sort of agriculture and farming and so forth. Do you see that happening? In your own sectors, has that started to happen? Or you see that more sort of 5-10 years from now?
I definitely see it happening, but also there's a lot of problems that I see as well. Now, when you mention one bottleneck I wanted to talk about is connectivity. Yeah. And again, I can bridge it with Japan. When we talk about robotics, AI, we expect good connection. We expect digital knowledge and so on, which when you go to most of the rural areas where the farms are, that's not the case. I specifically worked in Japan in our factory, which was 100 kilometers away from Tokyo. And believe me, yes, that connectivity was an issue and will be an issue for the next couple of years.
In Japan,
yes, yes.
for all the countries in Japan, connectivity.
Yes, you
problems.
wouldn't.
That's amazing.
The rural areas are completely different. So, yeah.
It's probably not a topic for this panel, but it's something important. The more robotics you bring, the less people you hire.
Yeah.
We operate particularly in Spain in areas of high unemployment.
Okay.
So there has to be a transition in there as well. If you look at big sort of massive scale businesses, the sugarcane business in Brazil, the moment you brought mechanization, every machine, 80 people out.
Okay. That's a
much faster, less
society
accidents.
challenge. Yeah.
But you need to balance, and there was a transition led by the government in Brazil on how to phase out those employees and put them somewhere else. But there was a deliberate plan to do this. If there is a sector where it's going to be impacted by AI, and a lot of people are let go, you need to think it through.
Of course,
and have
of course.
faith.
No, you need to think ahead of that. So right now, if you look ahead for your next, let's say, five years, what are the most exciting areas that you can see? No, I mean, we've been talking about sort of alternative circular kind of proteins. We've been talking about sort of applying, sort of trying to optimize a bit more sort of supply chain with AI, so that sort of things can move faster, more accurate, less waste. What do you find really exciting about sort of the new developments for the next 3 to 4 years?
I personally do not believe that in the food systems there will be one single breakthrough or something. I do believe we will have to move from what is interesting to what's really practical. And what helps farmers, food processors like Agrana Group really make decisions easier, faster, and under pressure situations. Technologies that really help us make a decision when to harvest, when or where diseases might spread on the field, when to purchase the raw materials. So very, very practical. So away from really the big words, but towards decision making and practicality. This is my idea.
Okay. And in your case, do you see any sort of specific areas where you think that also to provide some ideas to the entrepreneurs that are around here, so that they can be the new leaders in the food tech industry?
If you look at the post-pandemic years, I would say resilience is one. Become more resilient businesses.
Can you unpack this one?
Going back to the resource nationalism, going back to planning for risk scenarios that are more frequent now.
Okay.
Not only wars, but blocks in supply chains. Look at what happened in Hormuz. The disruption in the supply chain is massive. If you are not prepared with plan B and C, it takes a huge hit. I mean, I can give you examples from IKEA or Carrefour that a simple block of 2 days means millions of losses because they didn't have options. They didn't have. So resilience to me is one of them. And then if I look at the next few years, obviously alternative protein, and the word alternative, the word regenerative and organic are going to play a big role. So.
And do you see that sort of regenerative agriculture actually sort of taking over more and more sort of sectors of agriculture, or what would be sort of the areas where you think that it's most likely to be applied over the coming few years?
The primary sector, agriculture, will need to have some sort of revolution.
Yes.
70-year-old farmers, what's next? It happened in Spain, it's 58.
Yeah.
But the next generation is not wanting to run the daddy's business. So who takes over and how do they take over, right?
Yeah.
So that'll be important. Primary sector. Secondary sector becomes far more efficient with alternative energy, far less waste, better planning, better forecasting. Probably the bottleneck is in the consumers, because we still produce a lot of waste because of our decisions.
And finally, how about sort of the support from sort of the financial sector for agriculture? You know, I mean, how do you think that sort of this new evolution, which will probably sort of require significant amount of capex, significant amount of sort of investment, even significant amount of education, how this could be financed? Okay, there's now sort of a significant amount of impact financing. Do you think this is a good way? There should be some other ways that sort of even entrepreneurs here should be able to tap on. You told me that you are sort of in fundraising mode. He's in fundraising mode. Very interesting business, by the way. And so how are you sort of discovering sort of or obtaining financial support for the new ventures?
If I go back to history again,
yes,
and you look at the big traders, the Cargills, the Bungies, the ADMs, the way they were funded through subsidies to develop soy, corn, wheat. That model of row crop, it will still be there, but it's not the same. Now we're moving to a next generation of funders. Look at what the Common Agricultural Policy brought in Europe. There are large organizations, the Rabobanks, the BMPs. They have their agricultural arm, and they're beginning to fund projects not only in Europe, but in Africa, interconnected. I think the finance sector will evolve into something different from the super large-scale row crops and become more specialized in the fruit and vegetable sector. You look at ingredients now like chamomile, things like that, that require very specific funding in Madagascar for vanilla or in Zimbabwe for some specific cassava. And you see these banks being very quick in reacting to that.
Interesting. And from your group, any things that you can tell us?
Yes, I'm a firm believer of enhancing corporate innovation via startup engagement, definitely. As I'm based in Austria and the whole region, DACH region, Germany, Austria, you know, these are industry countries. A lot of big corporations, they in the last years changed their mindset. They started setting up venture arms, or setting up. In the past, I mean, all of these companies had, let's say, an innovation center, an R&D center, but it's not the same as really setting aside a group of people and amount of money to try and invest and partner with startups, make projects together. Definitely, that is something that needs to continue, and even more and more, because as he mentions, the subsidies parts, absolutely, this was part of the history of the agriculture in general. We cannot do without it. But yes, the corporates can help.
Fantastic. So Maria is ready to partner with your startups. That's very good. Woo. Okay. and yourself, you'll be super successful with a number of funders that we have here. Excellent. So thanks a lot for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.